All right, team, you're now live. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Orlean Grace Simmons, co-chair of the Joint Vance Monument Task Force. I will be presiding this evening along with co-chair Deborah Miles. Please respond to the roll call. Catherine Calhoun Cutshaw.
Present.
Dennis Fagnant.
Here.
Savannah Gibson. Lawrence Gillum.
Here.
Elizabeth Harper.
Here.
Essie Hutchison.
Here.
Carmen Ramos Kennedy.
Carmen, present.
David King.
Here.
Deborah Miles.
Here.
Bernard Oliphant. I think we saw Bernard. I'll circle back round for Bernard.
Present.
Andrea Olson. Ben Scales.
Here.
Shirley Whitesides.
Present.
Did I omit anyone? Thank you for responding to the roll call. We will follow the agenda that has been distributed.
I believe next up are the minutes. Welcome to everyone. I hope folks got a chance to read the minutes. Does anybody have any questions or additions or changes?
I have one change. It has to do under the roll call by the chair. And my name is misspelled.
Would you mind spelling that for us to make sure we have it correct?
It has Savannah Gibson, and then it has Lawrence, and then Gilliam. The M should be left out. It's Gilliam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vance. So noted. With that addition, are there any other corrections? If not, do I have a motion to accept the minutes with the changes?
Second, Bernard.
Who was the person who moved it?
Lonnie.
Thank you, Lonnie. Lonnie moved and Bernard seconded. I believe we need to go through a roll call to accept the minutes. So I will call and y'all can say yay or nay. Catherine Calhoun Cutshaw.
Yay.
Dennis Fagnant.
Yes.
Lawrence Gillum.
Yes.
Savannah Gibson. I believe she's not present. Elizabeth Harper.
Aye.
Essie Hutchinson.
Yes.
David King.
Yes.
Bernard Oliphant.
Aye.
I think Andrea is not present.
I'm present. I was I had to get the app. Yes, yay. Mm-hmm.
Good, welcome. And
thank you.
Someone will add that to the
Roll call.
folks in attendance. Carmen Ramos Kennedy.
Yes.
Ben Scales.
Aye.
Arlene Simmons.
Aye.
Shirley Whitesides.
Yes.
Great. The minutes are so approved. Thank you. And I believe with that, we turn it over to Cortina. Is that right, Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Thank you, Cortina, and take it away.
Cortina is going to review the action items and announcements.
Sorry, y'all. Didn't realize I was still muted. That escapes us sometimes. So just want to again say thank you to the co-chairs. Good afternoon to everybody tuning in. My name is Cortina, and I will be moving us through the agenda. So we'll start with the review of the action items and the announcements. Just to give an overview of our meeting and our pace for today, we will be hearing from community panelists later in our agenda on lessons in Black history in Asheville and Buncombe County. Prior to that, we will be taking a moment to do a community engagement briefing. Lillian is with us on the call, and we'll be providing some context around the building of the community lists. And then we will have some clarification on how the task force can engage with one another, just to be clear on the work that's to happen outside of the task force meetings. So we'll be clarifying those two things. And then also you all received in advance the proposal links and then the attached proposals. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. We'll be hearing your thoughts and comments on that, as well as moving us into discussion and moving you all towards your goal. As you can see on your timeline, we are on track with the pace. We are slated to do another community engagement segment in this session, so we'll get to hear from members of the Black community on history shortly. And then I will also be just saying this now, but also be looking to the co-chairs as we look at next steps at the end of this meeting to just discuss the history of indigeneity and hearing from those of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee and other members of the community in the next session. So please be giving some thought to what next steps are and where you want to go from here as far as history as we move into community engagement. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over and welcome on Lillian at this time.
Hi, it's so nice to see y'all again. Wanted to provide a quick update on some items from last week's meeting. One of the things that we discussed as a possible obstacle is the simulcast into Spanish during these meetings. With the format that we're in currently, that does continue to present itself as an obstacle moving forward. But as a solution, one of the steps that we can take is to ensure that all materials that are generated about the Vance Monument Task Force work are translated both in the message and the language into Spanish, so we can be sure that our outreach continues in Spanish as a means of working around our inability to simulcast at this time. The other piece that I heard from you all was to make sure that there is a component around social media campaigns. I think if you look at all of the social media, both for Buncombe County government and the city of Asheville, you'll see a much more intentional approach to raising awareness about the task force's work and the fact that you're even meeting at this very moment. So you guys are on the gram, you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube right now. So we will make sure that we continue promoting your work, closing the loop, providing more opportunities for people to view this meeting at the time that works best for them, and then circle around with their feedback to provide to you all. The other piece, and certainly one of the most important pieces, is that really intentional community engagement. This team helped to develop a community list of organizations, community members, populations who we want to be very intentional about. And so that list was presented to you previously, and then of course we'll drill down into it and make sure that the Shiloh Community Center, the East End and Valley Association, Burton Street Association, they are all reflected as well. And our team, led by Rashida McDaniels, will make individual contacts with each one of those organizations to make sure that that our process feels good to them. And so with that, we will be reaching out to them, identifying that they do want to participate, and then scheduling a bi-weekly phone call. So they have that first personal, intentional touch. We make sure we get their permission, and then we move forward with a bi-weekly phone call to provide updates on the work that this task force has done and provide avenues to solicit feedback from them in the future work. Did I miss anything, Cortina?
Sorry, that mute button always escapes I think you did a great job providing an overview. I want to open it up to the task force at this time if there are any questions, comments, or suggestions on what you've laid out, and thank you for your work. Any questions or comments at this time about the community engagement plan or any groups, associations that are still missing from our list?
Ms. Earl is trying to speak.
Oh, yeah, Ms. Earl, if you hover over the bottom of your screen, there'll be a panel that pops up, and the mic is the first button on the left. There you go. Awesome. You want to share? Welcome.
Thank you.
So did you have anything you wanted to share about the community engagement plan, Ms. Earl, or were you just trying to find the mute button for now?
Well, I was just trying to find the button to make sure that I was on.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'll get to introduce you more in just a moment. And Deb, you had something?
Yeah, it just suddenly occurred to me, I want to make sure that the far outreaches of the county are included and, sort of maybe think through the folks that are here. Like, I know there's especially a strong African-American community in Black Mountain, and to ensure that we reach out to the leadership there. And I don't know what the organizational structure is out there. Maybe it's the churches. I'm not sure. I don't know who else knows that, or wherever else communities are located that we need to make sure that we are inclusive on this in the more in the county, outlying county areas.
Catherine, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Deb just said, and then make a note that a large portion of the Black community in Black Mountain is involved in the organization FANS, that's Friends and Neighbors of Swannanoa. So that might be a really important contact to have.
Thank you. Ms. Orlean, I saw you had your hand and you're still muted.
I was going to say the same, along with the Martin Luther King Association for Swanadora Valley.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. And we can take maybe one more comment on this before moving on to the next item on the agenda. If we can just get a consensus check from the task force about your agreement to move forward with the plan as outlined by Lillian, Rashida, and the rest of the team. All right, thank you. Thank you, Lillian, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next up, we'll have clarification on communication outside of virtual meetings. I believe Richard White is on with us, or is it Brad? One of the two of you all to share on that topic.
Yes, Brad can walk us through that.
Sure. Thank you, Richard, and good evening, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be with you and see you work. As I understand it, there has been a request for some small working groups to participate outside of the larger group. That is permissible. The structure of that.
Pardon? Can I one clarification point, Brad?
Absolutely.
So this question actually came up around correspondence and email with the task force and what's allowable to be talked about via email, because there is the requirement that the task force, or the expectation that the task force be working outside of task force meetings. And so there's really a question of how exactly can or cannot that work happen. There's an idea of the small work groups, but it's not something the task force has decided yet.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate that clarification. So with regard to emails, there is no prohibition at all about the group corresponding with one another, but we have to be very careful about doing so in a way that would violate our open meetings laws. And even though you would not be seeing each other face to face, the fact that we are participating the way we are currently shows us that digitally you can still participate in a meeting. So anytime that you are sending an email to everyone in the group or responding to everyone in the group, you are potentially going beyond the limits of the North Carolina open meetings law. So my suggestion to you is there's no problem with somebody sending an informational email out to everyone, about topics such as meeting times or any changes to the schedule. But I would advise against sending emails to the full group in a way that is asking for a response. And if you do want to do that, try to communicate just individually back to that person, one at a time or amongst very small groups, just 2 or 3. Because again, we want to not have any communications back and forth that would have more than a quorum of you involved, because that is potentially a problem for us. So feel free to send out the initial email. If anybody needs to respond, try to just communicate with one person on that, and then we can hash the details out as a group in this larger meeting.
Thank you, Brad.
So
Clarification
Brad,
questions? Yeah, so Dennis, if you can also state your name for the record when y'all respond. Thank you.
absolutely. This is Dennis Fagnan. So Brad, I don't want to mince your words whatsoever, but so if you're just sending out an informational email, again, with no intention to have anybody respond, that's going to be okay moving forward.
Well, two points that I want to make. Do remember that no matter who you send it to, or if it's just one of you, or what the content is, it's still very likely a public record. So remember, there's 2 laws that we really need to keep in mind. The North Carolina Public Records Law, which means that all of these emails are public records. But we also need to remember the Open Meetings Law. I would suggest that if you're going to send out an email to everyone that's anything other than a quick piece of information that's really not about the business that you're doing, but maybe just procedural, such as a schedule change or a reminder about the meeting, I would try to avoid sending those to the full group, and especially avoid responding to all about any of these emails. That's the kind of thing you want to avoid. And I would certainly invite the county attorney, Michael Frew, to add on to any of that if he feels there's some additional insight to give.
No, Brad, I agree. Absolutely. I mean, that's why I pitched to the group last week. I think the concern is that, especially you guys have had a lot of ideas, and you've voiced a lot of good ideas here with the group in this public setting. But again, I mean, the thing you want to be careful about is transacting your Monument Task Force business with a chain of emails and have that decision-making process, because then you could hit the quorum number Brad was mentioning and have what would constitute an illegal meeting. So the only other thing I'd throw in there is, remember, there's no unsend button. So anything you send out there is going to be public record. So just be mindful of that. We want this to be an easy process for you. It's difficult enough that it is. It's challenging, but don't make it harder on yourself.
Thank you both. Deb, did you have a question or comment?
I just, my thing is I want to be able to talk to people individually, committee members outside of this meeting, just sort of gauge what people are thinking, talk about some of the community engagement issues, work on some of the research that's going into those folders. And that sounds like that's okay. I can do that.
I believe that is. I mean, that's just part of the sausage behind the scene of any committee or public body. I mean, you got to communicate. You might want to check with Orlean Simmons and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? So that's perfectly okay. It just don't send it out to the whole group and say, here's what I think we ought to do.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, so one other thing that I'll add is that if there is any proposal or idea or suggestion, that if you all can send that to me directly, so any member of the task force can send that to me, and then that way it gets included as an item just to note that has been uploaded or added to your folder, or as an attachment for you to review. And so that's a way to still notify the whole group that you want to send something out if that's the case. And then it sounds like those one-on-one conversations can happen in between meetings. Okay. All right, so moving to the last point in this section. So maybe just want to be mindful of our presenters' time, because I know Ms. Earle's not going to be able to stay with us the whole time. But I do want to have space here, maybe about 5-10 minutes if however much time is needed, but to discuss anything that has been shared, comments or questions on any of the proposals that have been sent out. And we had a proposal from Mr. Bernard Oliphant and also Mr. Lawrence Gilliam that were added, and also some comments that were added to your folder. So I'll open the floor to task force members at this time. And please remember to state your name for the record if you have something to share or add.
This is Catherine Cutshall. I just wanted to go back to the point that we sort of made about the fountain. And now that the fountain is in my head, it's kind of stayed there, and sort of been obsessing over it in the archives for the past week. But we found a lot of interesting information, and I have not been able to confirm that that is in fact justice. In fact, it seems like it probably isn't. The figure that was atop of the fountain that was at where the obelisk is now. And just a small piece of irony, people were very upset that the fountain was being removed for the Vance Monument to go in its place. So I just thought that was interesting. Again, something to think about. And though I haven't been able to confirm that the figure atop that particular fountain was justice, from all the pictures that we have, it looks very similar to what we would have the idea of, a blindfolded female justice. And I love the idea of having a fountain of justice. Like, there's just something really powerful about that. And it brings us sort of full circle, right? So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine.
This is Bernard.
Thank you.
Catherine, thank you for that comment about the fountain. But when you said full circle, that was a perfect segue to one of the elements that was presented in the first thoughts about creating a fountain rather than just an obelisk. One of the purposes of that circle is to ensure that it is inclusive of all of our indigenous people. And as a circle, it's also a perfect point of departure for any educational training, because we could put educational bits all around that circle that would create the true history of our environment and how it was created. In my research this particular week, I was absolutely amazed at almost every road, building, facility, street, even the city of Asheville has a relationship to slavery and Confederacy. Now, that is something that we as a body must deal with and be prepared to say our charter was to deal with the Vance Monument. And then from that point, we could pivot to all the other things to keep from getting extremely sidetracked. Because once you leave the Vance Monument, you got Patton Avenue, you got Merriman Street, you got Merriman Avenue, you got almost every name that I can think of dealt with slavery. So that's the piece that we as a part of our charter and our goals need to make sure that we deal with the Vance Monument, because we can't solve all these problems at once.
Thank you, Mr.
This
Bernard.
is Dennis Fagnant. And Bernard, you can keep on going. Klingman, Mount Mitchell. I mean, it just keeps on going. I specifically wanted to, Catherine, thank you so much for the research that you've done and sent out. It's been amazingly helpful. And then Bernard, quite frankly, the proposal you put out is just, I guess the word, so eloquent in how it attaches and is so inclusive to everybody. And I do really want to say thank you for such an insightful proposal that you've put out. I'm very much a fan of it.
Deb, you're muted. Looks like you're trying to talk. There you go.
Just add a couple of statements to that in our directives from the resolution that was voted on by the city of Asheville and Buncombe County, that maybe every now and then we review that, and just to remind us that it says that whatever happens will be designed by calls from African American artists. And I want to make sure that we are, and I love the circle and I love water and whatever, but I want the person who does end up designing whatever happens to be able to use their creative sparks for this. And I want to thank Lonnie for his thoughtful words about approaching this. And I think those kind of statements, and I don't know if folks got to read the Preservation Society statements. I think those are really good to get a sense of where the community and where we are all headed. Thank you. This is Deborah Myers.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Shirley?
I love the idea of the fountain and the circle, but within that, I would like to see a relief sculptures or heads that represents different cultures within the Western Carolina region. So the water is great, but with the figures or the relief built into the fountain, or it could be a sculpture, it's another teaching tool for the community, not just youth, but adults as well. And I think that would make it different from any other place, and you might throw a few lights in the water, colors.
Thank you. And just a reminder, Ms. Shirley, to state your name for the record.
Sorry, Shirley W. Whitesides.
Thank you. And Mr. Bernard, I see you. And Ms. Simmons, do you have something that you wanted to add after?
I yield to Ms. Simmons, and I reserve the right to come after her.
Thank you. I just wanted to encourage Shirley to put those great ideas in writing and email them to you, Cartina, so that they can be put in our folder and file, so we can go back and review all of them and see how we can integrate them, elaborate on all of them. I hear so many good things, and I don't want us to forget or to miss any of them. So Shirley, I would encourage you to do that, please.
I will do that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair Simmons. Mr. Bernard?
This is Bernard again, Bernard Oliphant. And as Sister Whiteside emphasized, as an educational focus, or that might be one of our key focuses, each sculpture can be a pivot point to another point to go. And as we use those pivot points, that's an excellent segue to include all of the indigenous personnel in this area, because the history is so rich. I mean, I don't know how we can all capture it all in one figure. So that would be an excellent way to bring all of the families and indigenous people in the area together in this circle of friendship and brotherhood and love.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. And I see Liz and then Andrea, and those will be our final two comments in this section.
Awesome, thank you. This is Liz Harper. I just wanted to share some research that Mr. Gilliam had asked me to do about the restrooms that were located at the bottom of Vance Monument. Some of you may know that there were two restrooms. I believe Deborah had added a photo by Andrea Clark, who has an amazing photography collection that's at PAC. I'm sure Catherine can share, but it's on the entrance. It says for white women. So those restrooms were segregated right underneath there as part of what was going to be a subway system. So they were in operation through at least 1962. So just something to think about. And from what I can tell, it looks like the fountain leaked in the early 2000s, and that's when the bathrooms were filled in. They were covered in the 70s, but just kind of a piece of irony is we talk about fountains and water and that kind of being the end of those segregated restrooms. So I just thought that might be of interest, and I'll add that to the research folder as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Andrea Olson here. I just wanted to just thank Mrs. Whitesides and Bernard, you as well, just for bringing in that perspective of all the races. I know sometimes when things happen in community, we start to just focus on one or the other. And I just want to bring up what Martin Luther King Jr. said during all of his work, is that we don't want to fight racism with racism, and that can go in any direction. So we want to make sure that everybody's included in a way that, like, I'm Filipino, I'm Cherokee Indian, and my children, my husband is, he's Irish, he's German Irish, and my children are all blonde, except for two of them. And when they walk downtown Asheville, I want them to also feel included too. And I think that there are lots of people who have built Asheville. We learned a lot last week. It was so wonderful to learn from the historians about people who've built Asheville. And I love that Cherokees included and the African Americans are included, and also who are the people of other colors who have really substantially just brought up the people of Asheville, built this town, and made it what it is today. Mrs. Whitesides brings up the idea of statues or relief. That could give a real visual, like everybody feels included because they're there. And we also tell the stories of what the really bad things that have happened here are, how we can remember and pray for those people who've suffered in this town. And I just want to just thank you guys so much. In the very beginning, I was not sure which direction this whole group would be going, but the inclusiveness of it is just what Asheville is to me, and I think it's beautiful. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. And if you have any issues uploading anything to the folder, feel free to reach out to me after the meeting. So at this time, I want to go ahead and welcome on and share my screen. I'm going to welcome in our panel. So last week, as some of you have alluded to, we did have a panel discussion about some of the origin story of Asheville, and specifically got to hear in some broad strokes about Vance and Vance's birthplace, as well as the area that we know around the area that we know to be around Vance Monument today, as well as some other threads of history and story. So today we want to take a deeper dive into history, and focus specifically on lessons in Black history of Asheville and Buncombe County. And we are graced with the presence of three amazing, dynamic community members who have a lot of depth of knowledge about this community, and who also still to this day serve in a leadership and visionary capacity. So I do want to acknowledge and welcome Elder Matthew Bacote Jr., Miss Eleanor Earl, and Dwayne Barton. I'll let them introduce themselves to you all as far as what they're up to in our community now. This slide with some of their associations will be in our shared folder. And without further ado, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Miss Eleanor Earl to share with us about her role in community, and she'll be speaking on segregation around Packsburg Park.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me. And I see my classmate over there, Miss Simmons. We graduated in 1961 from Stevens Lee High. And when Debbie called me and asked me to say something about the Vance Monument, I said, Debbie, the best thing that I can tell you about the Vance Monument was when I used to be a majorette, a substitute majorette. And we used to march from the city auditorium, going to Stevens Lee. And when we came down Haywood, up Patton Avenue, all the way up to the Vance Monument, we used to say, we halfway there. And that is about as much as I can tell you about the Vance Monument. I didn't know anything about it until you guys got together and decided that that monument needed to come down because of who he was. And I've learned more today. He was talking about bathrooms. We probably couldn't have gone to the bathrooms, but if we could have, I would have been going there instead of running home. We had to run home to use the bathroom. When we came to the Christmas parades, we had to run home to go and use the bathroom because we couldn't use the bathrooms downtown. I think that might have been one at Sears and Roebuck's. It was colored and white. And the thing that we concentrated on about colored and white, we was trying to see why was it a colored bathroom and why was it a white bathroom? Same as the water fountains, colored water and white water. We wanted to see the color, was there a difference in the color of the water, but it wasn't. We didn't understand that then. That was just the norm. We just went downtown. Like I said, I went to Stevens Lee. We weren't allowed to go through town. I lived in the South Side, which was on Ashland Avenue, off of Ashland Avenue. We came down Valley Street, cut over across Cox Street and Tuwala Street, and we was home. When we came, the most I know about the Vance Monument is what you guys have taught me. Now, as far as the different theaters that was around, I think it was 3 of them, Plaza, Strand, and the Imperial. And we could go to the Plaza Theater and the Strand Theater, but we had to go in the balcony, which we didn't think it was nothing wrong with it at that time. And didn't even think about the Imperial Theater. We couldn't even go into the Imperial Theater, but there was no thought about it. We knew that when we came through town to Pitcher Park and went down Cox Avenue, we always knew that the kids that came up from Lee Edwards, we walked on, they rode the bus. They always came up Cox Avenue, and at the top, they would always throw eggs at us or say, call us that N-word. It was always something that they did to us. We never did do anything to them. The worst thing that I can think that we did to them is that when we used to go to the YWCA on Poplar Street, we used to go there every Wednesday night, and the YMI, those were our dance night. The boys would come from Southside Avenue, and we lived off of Ashland Avenue, and we would all walk together. They would put us in front of them because we knew we had to pass that there. And we knew if we passed that skating ring, it was going to be trouble. So they would put us in front of us. The guys came out of the skating ring, the white guys, saying things to us. And for some reason, all of us girls back then could run. So the boys would tell us to run, and they had their rocks and their bricks and whatever they had, and they would just wear those guys' heads out with rocks and bricks and, throwing at each other. But it was, there was a market on Market Street. No, it was on Biltmore. And every now and then, we used to come over to that market on a Saturday and buy food and go back. But we just didn't go downtown that much. If we needed a pair of shoes or something like that, we would go downtown, buy a pair of shoes. We would go every now and then. If you had the money to go to Woolworths or Cress's, we could go downstairs and Cress's, we could go downstairs and get those good hot dogs. They were good. In Woolworth, we couldn't too much go to Woolworth, so we went there. We would just order our little hot dog and our little drink and continue to walk on. We had tough times back then, but we just didn't kind of know that they were tough times. We had fun in our day. We did what we had to do. We knew that if we was in the Christmas parade, we had to march longer and look better than anybody else in the parade, and that's what we did. We was always the best of the best that we could be. We were always respectful to everybody. We was not taught to be mean or disrespectful to anybody. We was just not taught that. It was just the norm that you walked on this side of the street or you walked downtown and respect everybody that you met, and you came home. The that we having now, we didn't see all that. It was there, but I guess it was there in a different way. And the reason why I said that thank you guys for putting me on first is because I live outside of town. I live sort of close to Fletcher. And the way things are now, I try to get off my job and go straight home and not, I don't like to hit the highway in the dark. That's why I was asking if I could be first, and I'll stay here a little while to answer some questions or talk to you guys about whatever I can talk to you guys about. But I have to make it on home before it gets dark because I have a little winding street that's 2.5 miles long, and it's just 2 lane, and I just don't trust it. That's about it. I am happy to know that you guys are planning on taking Vance Monument down. It needs to come down.
Thank you, Ms. Earl. And there's still some time here in your part of the panel for questions. We have about another 5 minutes. So if this is a good time, if there are specific questions about segregation around Pack Park or some early experiences or stories from Asheville, from Black Asheville, you can ask Ms. Earl at this time. Ms. Orlean, and then Mr. Bernard, did you have something? Or you're just off mute? Ms. Orlean.
I just wanted to ask Ms. Earl if she might say something about the difference between the libraries. There were 2. Can you say something about the libraries and where we went to do our research and check out books, classmate?
I think that the library that was segregated, I only went to that, I think, about 1 time. And the other one was on What Do I Mind?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Earmark. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think we went there when we was learning how to use the library. And you could go there and pick out a few books and all. We kind of had everything that we needed at school.
That is true. We did have the school library, and on occasions we had to go to the Market Street library, but we're not allowed to go to the Pack library to get books or do any research. And if the Eagle Market Street library didn't have the books that we needed, we had to pay 5 cents to get a card sent up to get the book from the Pack library, and then it was sent back down to the Eagle Market Street library to us, but we were not allowed to go in there. That was the 2 library. Thank you for that, Ellen.
I just wish that the kids nowadays was concerned about education as we were. We had to struggle, but we made it. Kids are a little different now than the way we were.
And then on that subject of, there was another question that grabbed my attention, but I have a question for you, Ms. Earl, that I'll throw in here. But you talked a lot about early social life and some recreation around the Black community in Asheville. And I'm glad you landed on education. There was a question that came up in some of our discussion and planning this session about what were some of those educational institutions. I don't know how many people on the call or on the task force are familiar with Stevens-Lee. I know I'm familiar with that legacy and story, but if there's anything you want to share about what was education like and why was there so much pride for you all with the educational institutions that were here? Because Asheville had a lot of historic, powerful African-American institutions and schools.
We just had a lot of pride within ourselves. If we had to put on a performance, we made sure that we were together. Our hair, shoes, we polished shoes. I can remember playing basketball, and we used to wear the high top, not Reeboks, they were called PS Flyers, I believe. And we washed our shoes, you know, the bottom might have been coming out, but you didn't know it because the shoestrings were clean and the shoes were clean. Same thing about the majorette boots. We might have had holes in our majorette boots, but you didn't know it because we polished our boots. We just had that pride, and we still had that Stevens Lee pride. We still have, and we try to instill it in our kids. And it's just a little hard to do, but we don't have people now like we had back then. If you was in the Glee Club back then and you needed a blue skirt and a white blouse, and your parents couldn't afford to buy you a blue skirt and white blouse, when you went to perform, you had that blue skirt and white blouse, but nobody said, Orlean need a blue skirt and white blouse, and everybody in the school knew that Miss Cowan would get Orlean a blue skirt and white blouse. It was just there for you. They didn't try to make you not feel good about yourself. You know, we just had that pride. I can remember when I was in the 6th grade, I had a little purple skirt. It was cotton. I loved that skirt, and I used to wash that skirt every night and throw it over the line in the kitchen for it to dry so I could wear it the next morning. We just had pride about ourselves, and we still have that pride.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ms. Earl. And before we say bye for this moment with Ms. Earl, one more question, Mr. Bernard, you got one?
Ms. Earl, if I may add, please, this is Bernard. We also should mention that Stevens Lee was the only senior high Black institution in the entire area. We covered Mars Hill, we covered Arden, we covered Canton, we covered Inca, parts of Hendersonville. There was no other Black institution that could handle high school. In the lower schools, we also should mention that every school was named after a street, not after the legacy of one of our Black heroes. You had Hill Street, you had Burton Street, you had Livingston Street, and it went like that. And also, the Stevens Lee Bears were an element of distinction. And I have my Stevens Lee hat on right now, so that it's still a legacy, and people have any opportunity that they can get a Stevens Lee element of any type will grab it up. So Stevens Lee hats and shirts and things are still available. People want to be involved with the castle on the hill, which is the war.
Right on. Stevens Lee was the one. I can remember when there were Allen High School, and we liked the girls over there, and we didn't like the girls over there because on Sunday they had our boyfriends over there at 8 o'clock, so we didn't like them too much. And what we did to them, we whipped up on them when they came to our basketball game, girls' basketball game. We tore them up. But Stevens Lee had everything about Stevens Lee was good. Everything. Teachers, students, everything. We've always been a good race of people and worked hard, proud, still proud. I'm gonna be proud until I die. Stevens Lee High.
Thank you so much, Ms. Earl. I just want to, we can't actually give you applause, so sometimes we'll just do waves or find our way to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here and staying around your computer a little bit longer. And safe journey home. If you would like to re-engage with us, we welcome that. And you can either reach out to the co-chairs or myself if you have anything else to add.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for teaching me so much about Vance Monument. I might have to let my little children do research on that.
Indeed. And there also are recordings on our public input page if you want to go back and look at last week as well. That's available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, classmates. Okay.
All right, so next up, I want to invite and welcome Dwayne Barton, who is the founder and CEO of Hood Huggers International, lead cultivator for Burton Street Peace Garden, among many other things in community. So Dwayne, I want to invite you to unmute yourself at this time, and I'll start your time.
Hello, my name is Dwayne Barton, and I'm a member of the Burton Street community, also a member of the African American Heritage Commission. And what originally got me into wanting to go into the tourism business is around 2015. I was transitioning, and I think the Daughters of the Confederacy was giving about $100,000 out, I think, to do some maintenance of the Vance Monument. Around that same period of time, a gentleman ran into a church in South Carolina and shot up some folks. And then I started seeing a lot of, historical African-American landmarks being torn down and neighborhoods be threatened, or future plans to tear down African-American neighborhoods around the city. And then I asked myself, what can you do? And the closest thing I could think of at the time was to go into the tourism business. And going to tourism business as a way to try to educate people and try to protect what's left of the African American community. In fact, during that period of time, Miss Debbie Miles, that's on this commission, she was a key supporter of me being able to start this business. We've been in business now for about 5 years, and gave me a lot of the direction and support. And there's a number of people in and around the community, Dr. Mullins with the State of Black Asheville, and this is another thing we did called Crossroads that talked about the process of urban renewal. And all those different activities really inspired me to take this very seriously and do what we can to protect what's left of the African American community. So originally we started over in the Burton Street area, and we tried to buy the land that E.W. Pearson, who founded the Burton Street community, helped establish it and did a number of things for the city. We tried to buy that property and that land to try to protect the building. And unfortunately, it didn't happen, and they tore it down. And that just had us start wanting to learn more about the African American community, and then, educate as many people as we could about it. I can also remember a time, and you got Miss Kennedy on the committee. I remember a time when her husband shot this whole video, created a whole video about the street names of the city named after slaveholders. And when he did that video, I paid it no mind. I didn't. That wasn't a particular focus at the time. I think that's how we was dealing with green opportunities and trying to get people jobs and trying to protect the neighborhoods and trying to rebuild the neighborhoods. So we really feel we wanted to take this tourism business as a way to educate people, protect, and take a portion of the profits to invest back into these neighborhoods that have existing initiatives that they doing that's designed to try to protect those. And that goes from Burton Street to Shiloh to East End. And of course over there is Stumptown, but by the Chamber. And we usually start the tours out at the Stevens Lee Community Center. And we start in that parking lot, and we talk about the great history of Stevens Lee. And when I talked to my moms about her growing up here in Asheville, she said it was ugly. This was a real ugly place to grow up. And she didn't really get inspired or or energized until she started talking about Stevens Lee. And I can remember when I first moved back here in 2001 that she took me to her Stevens Lee alumni association meeting. I guess it was a party where they was honoring the school. And even then, I didn't know the richness and the depth of and the power of that school. It was only through time that I learned more of the contributions of the African American community, and it still inspires me today to try to explore that history and also plug young people into being tour guides. Like for Shiloh, for example, we we went out there to Shiloh and we talked about how Shiloh used to be where the Biltmore State is and how that whole community was moved, even the cemetery, and how if you go, how you're in a once all black neighborhood in Asheville, you see a huge building in the center of the neighborhood. In most cases, that's letting you know that there used to be a former all black community, and that what now community center was one of those segregated schools. Out Shiloh, we recruited a young man who lived out there, and he did a great job in the telling the history. And with the tours, we want to talk about the history, what's going on right now, but the tours is really about the future. And the future says that we better get our stuff together or we out of here. We out of here. Even through this whole C-19, this COVID thing, they still building. I got more homes going up in my neighborhood than it was when we didn't have COVID. So how are we going to protect our communities in a real way? And when Katina, now I'm getting all a little off subject, but when Katina first asked me about coming to speak, I felt some kind of way about it because I am on the African American Heritage Commission, and I know that this Vance Monument monies that went there in 2015 was one of the reasons why the African American Heritage Commission was started in the first place, and one of their goals was to put a large historical marker focusing on African American history in the center of downtown. And I know we were working on that, for a very long time, did different groups. And I felt some kind of way that has been lost. And that now I'm talking to this new Vance committee about doing something with Vance Monument. And there's also a point where there's about 25 African-American projects going on right now talking about African-American history and culture, and none of them are monetized. Here we are in a very popular tourist destination, and we're not going to monetize these monuments in a way to get money that can go back into these struggling African-American communities. So I think if we're going to continue to create these committees and these initiatives, we got to connect the dots and not be going back and repeating steps, but building off the work that was done before. And so that we can really build something strong and lasting and that can be sustained, and that we leave an inheritance and a guidance, time, talent, and treasure that our young people can follow. Now, over here at Burton Street, we are still under threat for even larger highway expansion. That's going to continue to take homes and businesses away. Now, we know on the south side, they got these enterprise zones that's going to affect Emma and the south side, and even out to Shiloh. So based on the past, you talk about urban renewal, how African-American communities have been displaced and set aside. I see the same formula formulating right now. And I see a number of groups saying that they're trying to protect and they have the best interests of the African-American community, but I see a great disconnect. And I think if we reel 100 with this, and this hustle is real for everybody who's claiming to support the African American community, we need to connect the dots. We need to connect the dots and everybody stay in their lane and let's build and celebrate together. And that's all I want to say to y'all. Now, I wish y'all well. And I hope that the African American Heritage Commission, the Human Relations Council, and all other groups with the city and the county can get in the same room and say, okay, this is what the hustle is, this is the plan, and let's start a report card on like how are we assessing our work together, not as an individual silo, but how are we building together to assess what we're doing to protect the African American community in Buncombe County.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. Thank you so much. So we have another 2 minutes or so with Dwayne's time. If there are any pressing, burning questions or comments while we have Dwayne's time. Ms. Orlean, I see you.
Dwayne, I really appreciate what you are doing and what you are bringing forward to us. I also know that you are a great poet, and I wanted to know if you have written anything around some of these struggles that we have experienced here in this area.
Yes.
Yes is the short answer. So there might be some more to that, but for now we know there's some work out there. Thank you. And it looks like Dwayne might have gotten disconnected. Mr. Bernard, if you want to make your comment, I don't know if it was a question for Dwayne, and then we can share a follow-up question later. If
well, it was a thought. This is Bernard, tied to his questions about urban renewal. And I'm not sure if urban renewal is another phrase for gentrification. And that might be something that we need to explore and make sure that gentrification doesn't eliminate all the people that we want in our medical educational circle.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Other comments? Okay. All right. So that is our time for Dwayne. Again, if there are any questions or comments or areas for further research, feel free to send those to me after the meeting. At this time, I want to welcome back with us, but to speak with us in a different light, to zoom in on the block, that history, as well as some prominent African-American figures. I want to welcome in Elder Matthew Bacote Jr. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself? I'll start your time.
Yes, good evening, and thank you all again for allowing me to join you. I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to the varied accounts of the history here in Ashland and Buncombe County. As a matter of fact, I'm enjoying it so much until I've gotten very comfortable and almost forgot that I have a presentation to make. But here I am, I'm Matthew Bacote, and I would like to just kind of attach a little bit to Ms. Earle's presentation that we did have the Paramount Theater at the time that she was speaking. And also we had Newberry's 5 and 10 cent store to go with Cresses and Woolworth stores downtown. I noted there was mention about the restroom on the square. Yes, I'm very familiar with the restroom. I was in that area on a regular basis. I saw it and saw how deplorable it was and understood how uncomfortable it was for people who were not white. However, we did, if you recall, we petitioned the city of Asheville, and finally they built a public restroom on Eagle Street, which eliminated people having to be downtown and have to go all the way home to use the restroom. Also, another special note back during earlier years was that we were talking about the theaters a moment ago. We also had the Eagle Theater that's located on Eagle Street. We also had a theater at the James Key Hotel on South Side, wherein we were able to go, well, many of us on Saturdays, and see movies. But let me get into some specific things about downtown and the block. The block is extremely important area of the downtown Asheville community, and one that has been left out during the resurgence of downtown. I segmented downtown into 4 different corridors. Weimar being one of them. The other 3 were Hayward Street and Patton Avenue, Biltmore and Biltmore Avenue, then Lexington and Broadway. All of those streets were in deplorable condition in the late 60s and early 70s because most of the businesses moved out. But there was an effort put forth by the city and private industry to bring those areas back. At the same time, there was talk about the block, but that's what it was, simply talk, because the kind of effort that was put into the other areas was not put into Eagle Market Street. However, Eagle Market Street has one of the most important and richest histories in modern times in Asheville, North Carolina. At one point in time, the block between Biltmore Avenue and Spruce Streets contained 47 Negro businesses and professional people. Just think about this. Imagining Biltmore Avenue to Market Street, 7 restaurants. That's a very short block. 7 Negro-owned restaurants, and each one of those restaurants, the owners made money. The reason that I know that is because my father and mother, they owned a restaurant, quick service on Eagle Street. And on Sunday after church, we would be taken with my brother, sister, and I, we were taken to Eagle Street, at which time most of the business owners would come to Eagle Street and they would have meetings at my father's cafe. I may have mentioned this before, but I want to mention it again. The business folks had a loan pool that had something pretty close to $2,900, wherein those folk that needed money came to the cafe on Sunday afternoon. They made the request for money, $50, $25, $100, and there was only a handshake. My mother would write the name down. They would tell you when the money was going to be paid back, and it was paid back. To my knowledge, there was never any money lost. In that configuration of 47 business and professional people, we had insurance agents, had 1, 2, 3 insurance companies. There were satellite offices of major insurance companies in Winston-Salem and Durham, North Carolina. We also had Walter Lee, Mrs. Rita Lee, was a famous principal of our Negro middle school. Her son had at that time a general insurance company. That was unheard of for a Negro to have general insurance selling it, being in position to sell such. You also had in the area 1, 2, 3. There were 3 pool rooms in the area. And I'd like to note Mr. Vernon Miller. Mr. Vernon Miller, who owned the Dewdrop Inn barbershop and pool room located on the corner of Biltmore Avenue and Eagle Street. Mr. Miller brought the first Negro female barber to Asheville from Durham, North Carolina. It worked out so well until he brought 2 more Negro female barbers to Asheville, North Carolina. That was the introduction of females into the barber business in Asheville, North Carolina. Dates, yes, I have dates of this, and it is the dates in a history that I've written. If you can see this, a history of that will support the contentions that I'm making at this point. In addition to that, Mrs. Simmons talked a moment ago about the colored library. Well, I'm also going to note that we had the colored employment office that was located on Market Street back during that period of time. And we're talking about an era between 1932 and to 2005. The number of businesses that I'm familiar with in the area. The Weimar Cultural Center. We in Asheville are proud for people, but we should be more proud because we have the Weimar Cultural Center. I can recall when the Weimar Cultural Center became a community development corporation. It was the fourth community development corporation in the state of North Carolina. It was the fourth community development corporation that became a bona fide member of the CDC nationwide and statewide. The Weimar Cultural Center has an extremely rich history, even since the days that the ministers purchased it from George Vanderbilt. And I think most of you probably know the history of why the Weimar Cultural Center is located where it is and why it was put there. But it has played a vital role in development of Negro businesses. When the YMI served as a real community center, the YMCA was located in that particular building. The YMI met with some unusual but hard times, like many institutions of its kind across the country. However, an initiative was put forth in 1980 and decided to bring it back to YMI. In 1982, Robert Wilshire and Wanda Coleman was hired to head up this new resurgence of the YMI Cultural Center. And they renovated the building, and in doing so, they put together a program that brought about a number of Negro entrepreneurs, in particular in the carpentry business. The requirement was that the contractors who received an award to perform a particular service for the resurgence of the building, they had to hire one of the Negro persons to understudy in order to they could develop their skills. And several of those businesses, for instance, carpentry, several of those persons that worked as understudies went on to develop their own businesses. There are many, many cultural activities that have taken place in the Weimar Cultural Center, and it has represented a great part for the Negro community in Asheville and Buncombe County. And still today, in spite of the fact that it does not have the kind of countenance that it has borne down through the years, it is still there and ready for some participation by all of us to come together and let's make the Weimar Cultural Center what it can be, ought to be, in representative of our race and this community. Yes, across the country, we've had these types of centers in various areas, including the King Center in Atlanta. At one time was having a hard time because of the funding was not sufficient. And if it wasn't for the federal parks department that came in and instituted $10 million per year in grant, that organization would have fell by the wayside. But we've got those stories across the country. Here in Asheville, we've got a story, but we can make it better. I'm so happy to hear that the commission that's responsible for deciding what will happen with the Vance Monument, that's going to play a large part with what happens on the outside of Pack Square. Hopefully, in you all's work, that I mentioned Ms. Catherine Mitchell's name before. She heads up a Black Historic Heritage Group that has some funds to bring about developing a historical trail around the square and see if it can't be abutted some kind of way with the work that you all are doing as far as the disposition of the Vance Monument. Back to Eagle and Market Street. Today, we only have 5 Negro businesses in the area. The other part of it has now gone into other hands. That's something else that we must take under consideration, pay a lot of attention to. 2 years ago, I put 9 months into identifying every Negro business within a 2.5-mile radius of Pack Square. During this study, I found 1,268 white businesses and was only able to identify 37 Negro businesses within a 2.5-mile radius of Pack Square. Did I miss a few? I may have. I have tried to get information from the city of Asheville about the minority business director and the number of businesses that they have. I have been unsuccessful at this point. But ladies and gentlemen, the work that you're doing is great. The work that we have before us to be done is something that we, as Mr. Barton said a moment ago, we can do together. I'm very prideful and proud of the fact that you all are putting forth the time to study and to come together and meet and try to come up with some type of a real resolve for those eyesores that we may have in our downtown area. I say to you, I am willing, ready at any time. Anything that you feel I can do, please call on me. There is a lot more information I have about yesterday's history that I will not attempt to try to impart with you at this time. But I will take any questions that anyone have, if you have such.
This is Liz Harper, question for Mr. McCoke. Thank you for sharing. You could talk a little bit about Allen High School and kind of the dynamic between the girls that boarded there and the kind of Black community that already lived in Asheville.
I can impart a little information about the Allen School. As a matter of fact, I attended Allen School in 6th and 7th grades. At one time, there were boys that attended Allen. My mother also, being an educator from South Carolina, they didn't accept her certificate here back in the day. So it was necessary for her to go to Allen High and take several courses in order to get her certificate where it would be accepted in North Carolina. However, while there, she became a student in cosmetology. Cosmetology was taught at Allen School. And my mother became a student there and graduated. Allen High, after the 2 years that I was there, became an all female school. They said at that time, all girls school. What I remember was that it was a school where everybody who was there came together, and there seemed to have been so much enjoyment, because realized it was much younger at that time, so much enjoyment between everybody. The instructors, Mrs. Lucy Herring, who was one of the instructors there during the time, extremely beautiful person, who really, she was not the principal of the school. However, she was like the grand poopah of the school, because everybody looked up to Ms. Lucy Herring. But the Allen School was really a gift to ladies and boys of Asheville.
Thank you, Liz. And Carmen, I have you up next. Thank you, Mr. Elder McCoke. Carmen?
Matt,
yes.
How are you? It's so good to see you. You
Always.
still astound me with your incredible steel trap memory. I mean, it is phenomenal. I'd like the task force to know that Matt was an Asheville Living Treasures, and part of our process was to do interviews with our treasures. Matt had us full on at 8 hours of history, and there was still more that he could tell. He remembered every corner, every square, every nook, every cranny, every name, every circle. Phenomenal. Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation, Matt. And I hope if we have some component that tells the history of Asheville, that your perspective will definitely be included, because you are phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Carmen. Catherine, I see you. And if you could state your name for the record.
Sure. This is Catherine Cutshall. Mr. Bacote, I'm so glad to see you also. I've been missing being downtown and seeing you around and about, especially having your lunch at Woolworth. I'm missing that right now. But I was hoping that you could maybe speak to the origins of the Eagle Market Street community. I know that Asheville became increasingly segregated after urban renewal, but this Black community has been there for a very long time, and I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the block, as we have called it, was so special to Asheville and its development in Buncombe County. What happened in that area was that there were a number of the buildings that became tattered and worn, and particularly on the north side of Eagle Street. And over time, they became in such condition until the city put forth, along with meetings with members of the Negro community, about taking the buildings down on the south side. They were taken down 2 at a time, starting at Biltmore and Eagle Street, moving towards Market Street. Now, yes, there was a plan for a parking garage. The parking garage idea came about in 1984. And finally, in 1986, there was some agreement on it. I was called in by Wanda Henry Coleman, Executive Director of the Weimar Cultural Center, to negotiate with the city of Asheville to design the parking garage that was coming to Eagle Street in a way wherein we would have 8 spaces for Negro businesses. I feel that charge. The parking garage was built with those 8 spaces on the north side of Eagle Street. The biggest problem that we had was then filling these spaces. 5 was filled with Negro businesses, and 3 were not. They remained dormant there for a number of years, a little over a year. And then finally, the roll board moved in and took over those 3 spaces. Now, on the south side of Eagle Street, there was still activity going on, but gradually that died out because the businesses that were there went by the wayside. There was a church at one time, Hutchinson's Church, located on the south side. The building where it's called the Eagle, on the corner of Eagle and Market. And what I'm doing right now, the first time, ladies and gentlemen, the first time that I'm having to call on a particular name, and that is, the Del Cardo building. All right. The Del Cardo building, which was originally, I called the Wilson building. The Wilson building was inhabited by was a building that was occupied by Mr. George Wilson, 3 Negro brothers who were masons, brick masons, rock masons. Mr. George Wilson owned a cafe in that building up until 19 about 1946 when Ms. Erdman Queen and her husband came and they bought the business and opened up the Ritz in that area. The buildings next to the Del Pardo building, they call them the Collette buildings. They are owned by Dr. Collette, whose mother and father, Ms. Alice Collette, owned 2 restaurants on Eagle Street and also a pool room. Urban renewal. A lot of people said that urban renewal had something to do with the demise of Eagle Market Street. The way I see it, no, it didn't. I think the time had a lot to do with the demise of the block. Also, we got to realize that integration came about. And when integration came about, it allowed people to go where they'd never gone before, in particular the east. So therefore, that had some effect on the area. And if we take a very close look at that history, yes, urban renewal did some damage, but urban renewal also did a lot of good. And I think that's something people need to take a reckon with. And they need to really say, okay, it wasn't all bad, because if it wasn't for Lee Walker Heights, Hillcrest, which allowed people who were living in substandard housing now to be moved into standard housing with steam heat, with refrigerators, with kitchen cabinets that many homes didn't have before. Of course, we had Negro ownership, but we also had a lot of renters. And most of the real estate firms that rented were York, Strike Leather. There were 3 major white-owned real estate firms that owned most of the property in the South Side and other areas that was rented. And of course, naturally, it was not like it is today, wherein the city had inspectors who would go out and inspect property, or you could complain they were going to inspect property, then the landlord would have to fix it up. Well, that day it didn't happen. So therefore, a lot of homes went wanting. And so therefore, it was really inhabitable, but uninhabitable. And urban renewal brought about these particular public housing that helped tremendously. Yes, we fought. I was a part of the fight. But we fought with city council and the county and every entity that came forth about constructing homes for the displaced that would look more like a home rather than an apartment building. And that's what brought about the design that you see down at Erskine Street. They claim that it was impossible to build single homes to house those in need, but they could redesign new public housing where they would not look so boxy. And if you notice in those public housing that came about since Erskine Street and Livingston, they were designed different. That's a brief on, I hope I answered the question with all that I said.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Shirley, you'll have the last word before we adjourn.
Matt, this is Shirley. I'm Shirley Whitesides. Yes. Matt, you said there were 47 businesses owned by African Americans.
Yes.
Do you have an idea how many were owned by African American women?
Women, yes, I do. And I'm having to refer to my story history that I've written of the block, and I don't mind sharing this with those who do not have it. I don't mind sharing it. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mrs. Alice Collette, Mrs. Breland. I don't know if you've heard of Mrs. Breland, but Breland's Restaurant on Eagle Street is specialized in seafood, in particularly fish of varied kinds. We also had one, two, we had beauty salons that were female owned. We also had a restaurant by Jeanette Logan, and her sister owned her sister Stella was on one end, and Jeanette was on the one side, and Jeanette was on the other side of Eagle Street. They own restaurants. So Shirley, we're talking about maybe 9, 10 restaurants are owned by females. But a number of females served in major capacities in the insurance companies. So we had North Carolina Mutual, Winston Mutual insurance companies there, and the heads of those companies were Negro women.
Thank you, Elder. Absolutely, if you can share. I know I'm gonna be following up with you about the research and all that. So it'd be great to add any of that information to the share folder for the task force. Just want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank once again our speakers. Although Ms. Eleanor Orla is no longer with us, acknowledging her and her contribution to this conversation, as well as Dwayne Barton and Elder Matthew Bicote Jr. Just giving y'all virtual applause. Thank you so much for your time. At this time, I want to turn it over to our co-chairs to identify any next steps that might have come up for us to name here and or to go ahead and close us and adjourn the meeting. Ms. Deb, you're muted.
Thank you. Ms. Simmons, do you have any closing thoughts before we do roll call to adjourn?
Oh, so many wonderful things have already been said that leaves us with a lot to think about. And no, at this time I do not. But if I happen to think of something, I'll be more than happy to share that in our Friday meeting, and we'll start again. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, thank you to all our speakers tonight. I really appreciated how Dwayne talked about developing a business around tourism that tells the story to people who come to our town, because that also, I think, leads to pride of people here. And I don't know, and this is really anecdotal, I don't know if other people have experienced this, but when I've gone downtown in the last, ever since the Black Lives Matter got painted on the street and our city and county passed the first reparations resolution in the South, I've noticed more African-American families and couples who are walking around downtown, including taking pictures of the Black Lives Matter mural. So I want us to, as we think about how the monument area and Pack Square is going to get redesigned, is how to make it so that this leads to other businesses that pull off of that, especially in the African-American community. And how do we use this as a jumping off place for what Mr. Elder Bicote was talking about, and building wealth and connectivity and generational wealth. So with that, we will see each other. We will gather again next Thursday. I wish everyone a good week, a safe week, and we will now do roll call. So here we go. Catherine Calhoun Cutshall, for adjournment. So you'll say, yes, we want to adjourn, or something, however you want to express that.
Deb, just real quick, does there need to be a motion to adjourn the meeting first?
Thank you.
This is Bernard, so moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
It's Catherine?
It's Catherine, sorry.
So now we will go around and say your pleasure. Catherine Calhoun Cutshall.
Aye.
Dennis Bagnett.
Aye.
Lawrence Gillum.
Aye.
Elizabeth Harper.
Aye.
Betsy Hutchinson.
Aye.
David King.
Aye.
Bernard Oliphant.
Aye.
Andrea Olson.
Aye.
Carmen Ramos Kennedy.
Yes.
Ben Scales,
Aye.
Orlean Simmons,
Harley.
Sorry, aye.
Shirley W. Whitesides.
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you to everyone. Take care.
Good night.